Without further ado, I shall introduce the Emerging Creative session, which is chaired by Clare. After you.
Right, okay, so I know it's post-lunch. And I know everyone's, in a dark room. This is a dangerous space to be, isn't it? Everyone's feeling full of curry and needs a little nap. So I'm going to do for a little bit of audience participation first. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just put your hand up if you've got a job. Keep your hand up if you've got a job in the creative industries or arts or culture or heritage industries, that kind of world. Okay, right. Those of you that got your hands up, think about when you started out. What got you on that first job that made a significant moment in your life? Was it a significant person? Did you have a mentor? Was it training? Was it colleagues or networks? What was that thing? And I want you to hold that in your head right now, because I think that'd be an important thing to do. You can put your hands down now. Thank you for that. But you know who you are, all right? So those of you that weren't holding your hands up, my name's Claire Mitchell. My job at Arts Connect is to help people like you, without your hands up, to get into positions where you can put your hands in the air. So we create opportunities for young people, particularly in training in arts and culture, to meet people, to connect, to build their own careers and their own practice, whether that's as a freelancer or as an employee of a large organisation, working in the many variety of ways that you can work in arts and heritage and culture. But you didn't come here this evening to hear about me. What you did was come to hear from some of our young creatives that are in the Warwick district with us right now. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand over to some of our young creatives. So I'm going to introduce you to Jude Radley, who's a composer and is currently at Birmingham Conservatoire. India Rose, who is currently working around motion house and freelance dance in the West Midlands. And Lauren and Olivia from Pickle Illustrations. So over to you guys.
Good afternoon. So my name's Jude. As Claire said, I'm a composer. I'm originally from Leamington, but I'm currently studying at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. Next slide. Yeah. So I went to Trinity Catholic School for 7 years. So while I was at Trinity, I performed in bands. I played in countless concerts. I got involved. I had the opportunity to play the organ in church services. I think generally I was very fortunate with the amount of opportunity in the arts that I had growing up in Leamington and attending Trinity. I then got involved with the Young Composers Project, which was a scheme run at the Conservatoire. This was a free scheme, and it gave young people the opportunity to work with professional musicians, write music for them, and then have it recorded. And this was my first experience of working with professional musicians and having my own music taken beyond just my laptop in my bedroom. And so, one more. There. So this led me on to the course that I'm now on, which is basically the full version of the scheme that I was on with the Young Composers Project. So I now study... One more. I shouldn't have done all these animated. I didn't realise I wouldn't know clicker. So I now study composition at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, and I'm in my final year, so I've got 4 months left before I go onwards into the big wide world and find out what that's like. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience over the last few years and how that sort of prepared me to move forward. Next slide, please. And one more. Yeah. So obviously this was the year of COVID. There's been quite a lot of talk about COVID today. I don't really want to talk about COVID too much, but I will mention it a bit because it has sort of hampered my entire uni experience. So we were put into bubbles on my course with one specific family of instruments. I was lumped in with brass, which you'll see that becomes a bit of a theme throughout the presentation. Now, initially, if you asked me at the time, I would have told you it was really frustrating, and I absolutely hated the fact that I could only write for brass and small ensembles. But now, looking back, I actually think it was quite beneficial because it forced me to focus on certain skills in a small context before I got carried away with writing for 20 players and full orchestras. Next one. It also gave me an opportunity to refine my digital production skills with less opportunity to work with live performers and real players. It was a real opportunity to really get stuck in working with Logic, getting to grips with all of my software. Next one. During the year, I also got involved with an outdoor production of Medea. This was one of those strange COVID productions where everything had to be outside or in bubbles or distance or whatnot. But it was a really interesting experience because the production took place in the outdoor amphitheatre at the Mac in Birmingham. So it was a really dramatic setting for a Greek tragedy, as you can imagine. And that gave me an experience of working in the theatre, despite the fact that we were all outside. Next one. So I think generally across this year, I didn't try to write about COVID, but obviously it did affect the ways in which I was able to write. But I tried to specifically avoid writing about COVID. Next slide. So this took me on to third year, where I sort of did respond to COVID, but in the sense that I went in the complete opposite direction, and with the ability to work with live players once again, I was now desperate to work with as many people as possible and write for the biggest number of musicians that I could at once. So I worked with a brass band, I wrote for big band, I wrote for orchestra, and I sort of was desperate to get music played live as much as I could. So everything I wrote this year, this is last year, everything I wrote in that year was responding to, I think, all of the negativity that had been going around for the previous year, and had this real positive energy, yes, and it was all with a sense of sort of openness and an uplifting feel. I really felt in that year after COVID that as someone creating art and music, I had a sort of responsibility to lift my audience as an artist, because I think that's a power that we have as artists that we shouldn't waste. We should always be trying to use that. Next slide. So I'd like to share briefly a piece that I wrote in that year, which was named Impetus, and this was for brass band. I won an award for this at the Uni Brass Championships, which was the big brass band competition, and I think I'm just playing about the first minute and a half if the video works. Yeah, one more. Yeah, cool. So after that piece, which was quite a big project for me last year, it took about 4 months out of the year to write that piece. So this year, I've sort of been finally, for the first time, writing about more personal themes. So I've been, rather than just writing music that I think sounds good, trying to write music that actually comes from something that I'm thinking about or emotions that I'm feeling at the time. So I'm still working very much with large ensembles, and in fact they're sort of getting bigger. So I worked with the brass band again this year, and I wrote a piece for chamber orchestra. I've got a funk band that I'm writing for, and if you just skip to, one more. Yeah, and this brings me on to this piece. I was asked to write a piece as a result of the piece that you just heard. I was commissioned by the brass department at the Conservatoire, and I was asked to write a piece to be performed in Millennium Point in Birmingham, which, if you know Millennium Point, it's obviously got this enormous atrium space with balconies all the way around. And they asked me to write a piece for 40 brass musicians positioned all the way around the balconies. And I had about 2.5 weeks or something to write this piece. And this is what I came up with, or this is a section of it. I really should have got a haircut. I had hair sticking up everywhere in that. So next slide. So this year, looking forward, I have a couple of things coming up. As I mentioned, I'm currently writing an album for my funk band, which I have 2 weeks to finish before we record it, and I've only written 3 songs so far, so that's going well. And then as part of a project that I did with Clare earlier this year, with Arts Connect, I was at a youth event where the Birmingham Young Poet Laureate was commissioned to write a poem, and I heard the poem, and I just thought it was a stunning piece of poetry. So I approached the poet, and I asked if she would be interested in me setting her lyrics, well, I see them as lyrics, to a choir. So at some point, once everything else is done for the album, I will be writing a choral piece, which will be my first time trying to write for choir, so we'll see how that goes. And then I thought I'd talk briefly about, as I come to the end of my degree now, it's been a 4-year course, which is quite a long time to be in the uni bubble, and I've been trying to reflect on how it's all gone, where I might be going next. So it goes without saying that so much of my uni experience has been shaped by COVID, and this is obviously true for so many people that are now graduating or graduated over the last few years, where the experience that they've had has been so different to what you would normally expect. And it feels like now we're finally at the point where, as an artist, you can sort of make art again without having to acknowledge COVID in one way or another, whether that's that it has to be COVID responsible, or it's in response to it, or it's consciously ignoring it. It feels like now we're at the point where we can just make the art that we want to make again, finally. But it also feels like there's quite a lot of links in between academia and the wider industry that were in place before COVID, that now maybe in some cases people have moved on, or other people have moved in and they weren't aware of these links for whatever reason. Some of these have still not re-emerged, and if we don't sort of strive to put these back together, then maybe they won't. I don't know. Personally, I've come to the conclusion over the 4-year course. I turned up very set in first year on just writing for film. I was just going to write for film, and that's it. And the more I've learnt, the more I've realised that variety, versatility, and adaptability are far more important than being set on one discipline. So I'm always striving to listen to more, absorb more, and try more and more new styles. And finally, I'm looking forward to actually getting out of the uni bubble. I feel like right now, especially with only 4 months left to go, it feels like the biggest thing in the world, but I'm sure in 6 months' time it will seem tiny compared to all of the other stuff once you leave uni. So I'm quite looking forward to getting outside of the uni bubble and working with companies, organisations and artists across the Midlands. And I'd like to say thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, I'm India, my pronouns are she, her. I am a freelance dance artist, and when I say artist, I mean I perform, I teach, I make, I think, everything. I am based in Stratford-on-Avon, but most of my work takes place in Birmingham and Leamington. In this little presentation, I'm kind of going to be talking about my training, how I got into dance, highlighting the organisations that shaped me along the way, and what I look forward to doing in the future. As you can see already on the first slide, I quite like to spend most of my time upside down. Offers a new perspective some of the time. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, first of all, like a lot of young little boys and girls when I was young of our generation, I enrolled in a lot of ballet classes at the local village hall, nice and cold, but it was a way for me to channel my energy, otherwise I was climbing up the curtains, as my mum likes to say. I really, really enjoyed that kind of energy output until when I was 7, I found gymnastics. This I loved because I got to see both male and females creating sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, just seeing powerful beings that I could relate to. Also seeing like what the human body was capable of, like people doing these incredible tricks in the air and landing without any steps. I was just like, defies gravity, it's insane. I learnt a lot physically and mentally from gymnastics, a lot of resilience, just being able to be upside down like that, up on there. And it was just something that I just found that worked within my physicality. That really got to the point where I was kind of 15 or so. I realised that the reason why I was loving the gymnastics wasn't because of the daredevil tricks. It was the dance and the floor routines that I loved to do. I was really fortunate enough to then get an opportunity to create and choreograph floor routines for everyone in the squad there. And I just found it fascinating to be able to marry up this artistic side to these difficult skills and not just, you know, having, I'm going to do a skill here and then I'm going to do that here. It kind of allowed a creativity to flow, and I found that so fascinating to kind of marry the two. Then when I was skipping back a little bit, when I was about 13, I found Motion House. As many of you might know, they are resident here in Leamington Spa. I was a part of their youth company, the best 3 years of my life, not to sound cheesy, and I haven't been paid to say that as well. So we had some amazing dance opportunities performance-wise. We got to perform in U-Dance, Coventry Theatre, and the festivals there. Curtain raisers and fundraisers for the Motion House company, and being able to actually see the company perform alongside us was so inspiring to me. You know, I got to see females lifting males, like you don't see that every day, and just seeing, you know, the fact that I could be able to do that was just incredible. I love the hybrid of dance and circus and theatre that they have, you know, their multimedia backgrounds. The circus skills matched with dance was just incredible. It opened my eyes up to so much more that I thought dance could be. Alongside that, I was a part of the CAP programme at Dance Exchange. It's now called Fabric, as it has merged with the Nottingham branch and the Birmingham branch. I trained at the Birmingham branch. It was on a Sunday, got to dance all day, and got to work with a lot of incredible artists who at the time I didn't appreciate kind of the gravitas that these artists had. But I got to work with people like Sarah Dowling, Lee Anderson, Haggy Ikira, Gary Clark, and Human Hood, but to name a few, like looking back, I can't quite believe our luck. And we were really encouraged to go see shows, attend workshops, actually immerse yourself in the dance world and see what was possible. We also had amazing performance opportunities there, like the Birmingham International Dance Festival, which you can see in the middle picture on the screen there. And we also had our showcases, summer and winter. We had one year where we got to work with the Yvigati strand at Dance Exchange and worked on a co-commission with Gary Clark. We were blending together contemporary dance, Kathak dance, and Bharatanatyam, and to be able to learn these two different South Asian styles of dance was fascinating to me. Just being able to blend those and incorporate them with contemporary just opened up my mind to even more possibilities. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I then went off to train at 16. I knew sixth form wasn't for me. I really just wanted to dance every day. So I moved up to Chester and went to the Hammond School, where I did a full-time HND for 3 years. Unfortunately, a year and a half of that on the latter side was a little bit hindered by COVID, but I'll go into that a little bit later. But the training at Hammond was incredible for me at such a young age. I wasn't ready to specialise. Even though I knew I did want to go down the contemporary route, I knew it wasn't ready for me yet, or I wasn't ready for it yet. So I did a very versatile kind of training course where I did lots of different styles: ballet, contemporary, jazz, tap, commercial, Latin, singing, and acting. And I found all of these styles has really informed my practice now. I don't just see myself as a contemporary dancer, I see myself as a dance artist because I have all these strands that I can pull upon. And also the cross-genre skills that I learned from there is something that I really like to employ in my teaching as well. The performance opportunities that we had there were incredible. We had showcases every year. Thankfully, for the first 2 years, we got them. However, straight after the second was when the dreaded lockdown, the first lockdown came. So we were lucky to get that in just before. We unfortunately couldn't have our graduate showcased at the end of our third year because we had an outbreak of COVID again in the school, and unfortunately weren't able to carry that to London, but I'd much rather not infect anyone and be at home. We also had some site-specific work in our choreography modules, which I really, really loved. Having a space to work in, as opposed to just a stage, was just fascinating. Like, I had an open perspective, and it gave me so many more opportunities to be able to create. And I was also able to teach the associates and our sister school in Malta through Zoom, which was brilliant, and I was super, super grateful for those initial teaching opportunities. Going on to Romeo and Juliet, it was between my first and second year at Hammond in the summer. We performed at the Birmingham Hippodrome, and it was all part of Matthew Bourne's New Adventures, Romeo and Juliet. He was touring his company throughout the country and did it at 14 different venues. Each venue had a young cast of 5 performers at each venue, and we were integrated then with their main cast. We're really immersed in what a dancer's life is, what it takes to be a dancer. It was very, very eye-opening. I just really, really enjoyed being able to see what it took to create a large-scale production, you know, seeing all the behind-the-scenes, what it took to take something of that scale on tour, all the sets, all the design, all the notes, everything. And then also just seeing dance health, how the dancers themselves carry the importance of looking after themselves. I know that sounds silly, but just seeing them in practice made me realise how important it is, because we're athletes. You know, we can't just turn up and just do a show. There's so many different things mentally and physically that you have to prepare for to do a show, and that I've started to develop in my own practice when I'm teaching, so that's really informed that part. Next slide, please. Perfect. So, as I kind of mentioned, COVID kind of had a little bit of a hindrance on the last year and a half of my training. Due to that, I kind of didn't feel like I had any closure on my training, so I was kind of left thinking, what the hell am I going to do? So I realised that I could go to uni and do an extra year. I wasn't ready for the industry yet. I was, 19? I wasn't ready. So I went to the University of Chichester. They were very, very great in offering me a top-up year in dance performance rather than dance studies, as that course fitted me better due to what I wanted to study. So as part of their third year, we create a company called Threefold Dance Company, take that on tour around the south of England, go into schools, we teach workshops, and we create a tour, a triple bill, with also choreographic works in there. The choreographers that we worked with on our tour was Amy Morvell. We had, can't even remember. We had Sean Dillon and Detta Howe. And just being able to see their processes within our space was just fascinating. Seeing how a choreographer works for a tour was brilliant. I then found myself researching more and more into somatic works, which then influenced my dissertation. And then that, again, has influenced my teaching. I like to work from a somatic base and then get incredibly physical. And then we had a choreography and immersive module working with Thea Stanton. She guest lectured on a couple of our lectures of that module. She's a PhD student at the University of Chichester. And her PhD is in immersion, choreography, and decolonisation. Next slide, please. I'll just add quickly, I will go back onto Thea's R&D after I've talked about this. Next slide. So, after graduating, I then found myself in the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony, Birmingham. As you can see, it was pretty epic. There was a lot going on. I don't know if many people happened to see it, but I really hope you did. It was quite an intense contract. 7 weeks for just one live show kind of showed that scale that we were working on. There was 42 of us freelance dancers. And even though that sounds like quite a lot for a company of dancers, we were only like this big compared to the whole scale. So it really amplified, how much work it was to put into this organisation. I loved being in that large stadium site. I was so used to performing in a small, intimate auditorium like this, so then performing on that kind of stage, as well as it being broadcast live across the world, was pretty incredible and really changed my practice for the better. Being able to see the volunteers, critical mass, the puppeteers, parkour artists, the float drivers, the car drivers, creative team, dance captains, choreographers, not to mention all the incredible people behind the scenes, just blew my mind. The scale of production and the organisation that must have took was pretty incredible. Next slide, please. Okay, so after the Commonwealth Games, I then was invited to do some R&D work with both Morvell Dance and Thea Stanton. I'll just quickly talk about what we did with Thea. It grew from our immersive choreography module. She asked 2 other local dance artists from Chichester and Sussex to come work with us. And it was just 3 artists and Thea on this production. And she was really, really interested in, when you typically think immersion, you think of these amazing lights, these amazing sets, surround sound, kind of punch drunk kind of esque. We were going for more of a, let's leave the sound, let's leave the light, let's leave the set. What can we do to transform this space with people in it and charge that space with a new energy? How can we create an immersive movement language that gets people to participate for free will and that feel comfortable enough and safe enough to do so? It wasn't easy, and it's still ongoing. We're waiting for a little bit more funding, and we're hoping to bring it down to London. But it was just such an incredible process in realising, kind of re-educating myself in what immersion was. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The other little part of R&D, as you can see on the screen there, was with Amy Morvell, one of our choreographers on the Threefold Tour. She's a creative assistant at Leela Dance, previous Chichester Uni student, but this was for her own company. It's a work in progress where the work's kind of going to take off a little bit more in a year's time due to the artistic process. I can't go into too much detail about that. But I just wanted to touch upon her creative process because it's fascinating. A lot of her work comes from interviews from people and using that spoken word and text to create and generate movement with almost the rhythmical aspect, how we speak, how we connect with whoever we're talking to, and how we can translate that through movement was fascinating. She also likes to use a lot of projection, multimedia, photography, as you can see in the bottom picture on the screen there, and also the one up above. We've got a screen in the back there, which we were moving around and projecting onto. And again, that is a work in progress. Next slide, please. So, going on to kind of what I'm doing now. I work with a charity called Sense, non-profit charity that supports individuals to express themselves, to develop their skills and confidence, and to make choices and live a full life. This charity is mainly for those who have complex disabilities and who are deafblind. They work with both young and old participants, and we call these participants art makers because they are at the forefront of this experience. I am mainly an assistant artist, and upon this work, it really redefined to me what disability was. You know, it's only a disability because of the social boundaries that we've put in place. So if we take these down, accessibility is there. So that's something that I really want to explore more in my work and see how I can make dance and theatre a little bit, well, a lot more accessible. And the next slide, please. So, to the future, I've kind of written this as a bit of a pledge to kind of say I am going to do this, not let my lack of confidence kind of get away with it. I am just getting to the grips of new demands of freelance life. I only just graduated in May. Still, that's no excuse. I feel like this is the moment to learn and acquire more skills, ask more questions. I love teaching. It is really a passion of mine, but I'm looking for something more. I want to dance, perform, and create a lot more. I do want to develop my choreographic voice through different mediums, film, photography, live theatre, and immersive performances, but all with an accessible front. And just also, the other little thing that I wanted to kind of say is I want to start physically employing greener ways of working, more in a response to the climate crisis. How can we create a greener touring company or individual workforce? Thank you very much for listening.
Twizzle that so you can...
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hello, next slide.
Everyone's still with us?
Yeah,
Next slide, please.
thank you. So we're Lauren and Liv. I'm Liv, this is Lauren, and we'll also respond to the Pickles, as we're so called now. And I suppose we identify as an illustration duo, so we like to put illustration out on any canvas, whatever's best for that project, whether that be public art, murals, print and digital outcomes, kind of anything that you can put illustration on, we like to work with, and also kind of a key focus on placemaking and like connecting the community and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so that's what we do now.
Yeah.
But it's all got to start somewhere, and in this talk we're going to kind of go over some projects that we've done up until this point. First do a little introduction of how we got there, and then kind of what we want to do next. So next slide, please. So this was us, I don't even, how many years ago?
2019.
2019.
How many?
So,
I don't know.
don't look that different, to be honest. But we made T-shirts.
That was the first thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, so we made T-shirts with Pickle on, and that was us in a university house. We did graphic communication and illustration at Loughborough Uni. I did a year in enterprise, which was like a placement year. I was the only freelance artist on that. It was mainly
Business people.
business people
Yeah.
making robotic arms that are going to change the world, and I just wanted to draw. But
Which is very good.
yeah,
Everyone needs that.
there's a space for that, and I kind of found my own space for that within Loughborough, and they were so supportive in getting us to where we wanted to be.
And I saw all this happening, and I was finishing my third year because it was a sandwich year, and they were like, "Oh, you can come in the evenings and do like how to set, write your own business model and things like that." Because if you want to go into illustration, your first thing is going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to be a freelancer." But so I was already thinking I need to set up my own business, and then so we met at that really, and then wanted to work together.
Yeah. So then Pickle was born. Next slide, please.
And everyone always asks us how you come up with the name Pickle, and I think we're still fond of the name. We haven't got bored of it yet.
Thank God.
But yeah, there's a lot of things. It was like formulated in a weird uni house situation when we're like, oh, what names do we like? We like the word pickle. We like pickles. Your cat was called Pickle.
She's so
in the
glam.
bidet. Queen. And we just love it.
Rest in peace. Next slide, please. So this is our first job, which was the classic not paid for first out of uni, still in uni job.
It was in my third year, like my degree show, they let me use it as my project.
Which is also good if you can do that. So even while we're at uni, we're kind of looking for ways to start. I think the idea of coming straight out of uni and having to start then freaked me out too much. That I was like, let's start now. And this was kind of just materials paid for mural inside a young parents' home that they wanted a bit of colour on the walls, and we're like, let's try this out, see if we work together.
Can we work together well?
Can we produce something with low risk? And that's what we came up with. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this is a couple of outtakes, like, of situations. We've become better at photographers now. We actually thought that photo would turn out well. We looked like corpses.
Yeah.
But like one of our first projects that we worked on was with Foss Park in Leicester, which is a retail park. Your M&S, your WH Smiths, your Costa. It's a bit like, we were asked like, oh, how can we formulate some kind of community there? So we work with some young community groups to create designs to go onto these fiberglass boxes that were going to be situated around the site to kind of guide people around, like a trail, which was really exciting actually, because it was kind of the first thing that kick-started us working in the public art realm and public art trails, and how to kind of formulate communities and a bit of sense of local pride. Because retail parks, people kind of want to get in and out, where it's like, how can we kind of create some kind of life to them? So this is kind of them arriving into Lauren's house and then using Lauren's conservatory to paint them in.
So a bit of jump to how we got here from the last one. A lot of we were kind of taking on random little bits and bobs while we're still at uni, but this came from a failed application for a mural. So it was an application that was sent away through someone we met at like a creative coffee morning.
Advised to go to those.
To kind of go out there and meet people. So we applied to do this mural. They said, no, you haven't got enough experience. And then they were like, can you paint 38 fiberglass foxes? And I was like, well, we definitely don't have experience in that, but sure. So I think it was kind of taking on the opportunities that come your way, making the connections, and then kind of working from there to kind of steer it in a direction that you want to go in. This was a good opportunity, and really is what kickstarted Pickle in a time of COVID where not much else was going on. This gave us a real sense of purpose and kind of started where we wanted to go from there. Okay, next slide.
So we kind of split between half and half, public art, murals, and then we'll also go on to a bit extra. But so that involves murals, trails, installation pieces, also events as well. Anything you can think of that will that's 3D and not something that's printed necessarily.
So this kind of links with the kind of place-making topics that has been explored today, and kind of from that Foss Park job. So we're going to go into a few of those projects now. Next slide, please.
So these were the foxes created at the end in Lauren's garden. And like there was also a trail around the whole Blaby district as well, kind of highlighting key tourism locations, which is all still there now, so you can still have a look. But yeah, like some of these groups, it was interesting how to kind of co-create with these groups, and that is something that we're still trying to work out, and we'll talk about in a bit. But we like did Zoom calls with them. Sometimes it was phone calls, workshops in person, things like that. Yeah, next slide, please.
We also do kind of more traditional murals. These are both printed ones, so more digital illustration, then printed on walls, less labour for us.
Yes.
Next slide, please.
Also, we've done other trails. These are wooden ones at Sudbury Hall in Derby. So they've kind of been closed for a while, reopened with a more key focus on how can they make more exciting projects, exciting things for kids, linking the house and the gardens together. So we created a grasshopper trail, which, yeah, is really fun, like with their children ambassadors. So we kind of created packs that they could use to inform us of their ideas of what they wanted. Like one kid was like, I want one to be Minecraft, so there's one at the front that's like that, that kind of thing. Next slide, please.
And this is one of our most recent projects with RSC and the Barbican, which is like proper pinch me stuff, where we created a structure and also vinyl mural with a group of young carers as part of their placemaking program.
Yeah, Ida earlier talked about that with their, like, so we work with their placemaking department. And that was great because we had like workshops with the Warwickshire young carers with a poet as well. And that's kind of really informed now our way of working, of how we co-create. We find that the most beneficial things for us is finding like kind of conversations and audible kind of information, which then we can turn into something visual. Yeah.
Next slide, please. Do you want?
Yeah, so this was a project we did over summer with Solihull Council, where we painted on utility boxes like the BT and the Virgin Media ones you find. And this was kind of a project that was already kind of formulated the brief. They were like, we've got these boxes, we want them all to be wildflowers of the area. And then we then found that the most kind of, because all projects that we work on, we work with kind of community or kind of a focus on the local people. Whereas this one, it was kind of the flip, like on its head, is in like we spoke to the community like after, like once we were creating the like painting the boxes, and that was like the most valuable thing for us.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, there's some examples there of us talking on the street while we painted these, and I feel like this project has been the most kind of successful in the place making kind of realm, because people spot them down the road. They really like just that bright pop cover. They like to feel like they were there when we created it, so they have this kind of sense of belonging with them. So
like
yeah,
a dad was with his kid and he was like, look at this, remember this, because they'll be here for a while, like you saw the artist. And I was like, ah.
Yeah, it's a nice like moment to create that. Next slide, please.
So yeah, so as well as the obviously the public art murals, we also do print and digital. So this is all the stuff like when we're really tired and we're like, we don't want to actually go and paint something, we want to sit on we want to be on our desk using our iPads. So that's like maps, leaflets, website assets, packaging, animation. We don't animate ourselves, we work with closely with an animator who we always turn to. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so this is a recent project with the Co-op Foundation. It was to illustrate the research they'd done with a group of young people about what they want their future community to look like in 10 years. So they kind of picked up on points that the areas they wanted to focus on, and we then responded to that through illustration, and then it was animated by an animation studio. So yeah, that was with works with Beat Freaks, who are based in Birmingham.
We're always like really love collaboration, and where like our skill set isn't like met, we like to work with the people that can do that. So animation, and obviously like illustration is always more fun moving. Next slide, please. So also as well, we do like brand assets and stuff like this. So this was for the Professional Writing Academy, and they just wanted some simple illustrations to go on the website. So it's as simple as that sometimes. Like we want a rabbit meditating. It's like,
Yeah.
go on then. Or like, kind of like we're doing a course about crime writing, so we did a naturally turn to a crocodile,
Yeah.
do that kind of thing.
But that's the power of like visual imagery and why we love it so much, because things don't seem that impossible.
Yeah, I think that's the
go
key
on.
like thing about illustration. It's like you can really create anything that's not possible through photography or something. It's like you can create the impossible. If you want like a massive, like a mouse that's bigger than an elephant, you can. Like
Yeah.
you can literally draw anything. So that's what we kind of like focus on. Like it's kind of graphically, you know, communicating anything graphically, which we love.
Next slide, please. And this was a recent project with Roundhouse in Birmingham, which is a museum heritage site, and they wanted to redevelop their site into a space that felt quite far from what they used to be, with sepia tone photographs, a bit of text nearby. You can walk around, you kind of don't really engage with anything in the space. It's history, like formal. So they really wanted to break out of the box of that. So we created a projected animation for them, like telling the stories of the workers that used to be based in the building, and then it was projected outside.
Yeah, to like an area where it's like outside of pubs, people can like watch in the evenings.
Next slide, please.
So this was also kind of tied in with Foss Park and the Blaby Fox Trail. So where the foxes were located around the Blaby district, we created a map, and then that was then animated and projected onto a building, which is great. And it's great to also kind of find a solution to how do we work in like a heritage site or somewhere that's got like red tape being like, we can't actually touch any of the walls here because like, you know, this is like listed. But we can project onto it, and it doesn't touch it, but it does touch it. You know, it's like it's really cool. Like we didn't animate this, but as we said, we work with animators. But yeah, next slide, please.
And then we also have done work on packaging. So this was a recent project where we just illustrated again some assets that then got printed onto some packaging for some reusable sanitary towels for a brand called Nora.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun project as well. They had a really nice, like, fresh tone of voice. It was really nice to respond to, and we felt like very much we were kind of a target audience for them as well. So we would get to draw some things that we found
And this
fun.
is like where we then also work with like design agencies. So like it could be like a graphic design agency, and they're like, oh, we need an illustrator for this. So we like working with that as well. And
Yeah.
we're like, yeah.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
So what is next for us? Next slide, please. So in the top corner, we've got a stand outside, but we're kind of experimenting with ways of doing like layered structures with wood, like we did with the RSC project and with the Warwickshire Young Carers, finding new materials and new canvases, and excitingly, how can we make that move potentially, or kind of making moments like opportunities for people to take photos in front of them, visitor experience, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Make things that are engaging. I don't think illustration just has to be on a page in that sense. Also, the second illustration kind of represents collaboration, because we enjoy collaborating with people so much, whether that be wood fabricators, animators. We want to keep doing that. We think communication is so key between the sector as well, and it'd be great to collaborate with loads of different sectors as well, because I think creativity doesn't need to be put in that kind of box of you're an illustrator and you're a dancer, a composer.
Yeah, so they all can benefit off of each other.
Yeah.
Us laughing there is like just to have fun. Sometimes you can,
Yeah.
like when you're running your own business, and sometimes you can get like, you know, so bogged down with, you know, trying to make money and things. It's like sometimes you've got to actually just have fun, and that's what gets you creative, and that can really like drive what you're doing. And sometimes it's always good to remember that.
Yeah, so like enjoy what you're doing, and I feel like if you're passionate and you speak passionately about what you do, people are going to respect that, and they're going to want to help you, and they're going to like point you in the right directions, because they can tell, like, people can't resist people who are talking about something they're really into it. Like, it's really like engaging.
Definitely.
And then the kind of hungry stomach one, we're like scratching our heads today. We couldn't remember actually what this meant when we
were
did
like,
it.
why did we put this in?
I was like, I'm not really sure. I'm hungry. I don't know. Maybe I was hungry at the time when I put that in. But like how we've kind of phrased it in our brain is we kind of want to do more kind of like exciting projects that also could mean like maybe getting an agent representation to kind of stretch us to kind of projects that are kind of a little bit out of our grasp at the minute, to take more risks through a place that is like a safe space to do that. So
yeah, and I think we just want to experiment. We just want kind of we've done some animation and doing like 3D things. It's like, how can we really push that? And we want it to kind of be informed by the people that we're creating it for. Like we're always, we want like our artwork to be disruptive in a good way, like create impact and create meaning, but also want to make it so it's actually completely like beneficial and responsive off that local community and like relevant. So it's like we need to research more into how best ways can we represent illustration in doing that, and how can illustration be a benefit of that.
And then the last one is just kind of bigger scale. I think it'd be nice to do something, murals. A big mural. I don't know what the biggest one we've done, but it'd be nice to do a bigger one. And then next slide is a thank you, I think. So thank you.
Those are all socials at the bottom.
If anyone wants to go and follow. And very aware of time and questions. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
I think we've got some time for questions. Where's David? I understand you're the man with the throwing. Good, I'm rubbish at throwing, so that excellent. So we can both look foolish. Yeah. Has anybody got any questions for our fantastic panel? Any burning? Oh, I can see one over there. There we go. That's a funny throw, David.
Hello. How inspiring to hear young people talking so passionately about what they love to do the best. My question is for the Pickle duo. It's so refreshing, actually, to work as a duo. I've never heard an illustration duo before. But how have you decided on your joint style for your work?
I feel like we're asked this question quite a lot, because it's like, how have you blended them together? And I think naturally we gravitated towards each other because our like tone and our kind of passion for kind of the outcomes we want to create are quite similar. I think you naturally were more digital and I was more like kind of hand-drawn, and kind of the magic of using digital brushes now, we kind of amalgamated those together. But yeah, we kind of we do a lot of our work on the iPad, on like Procreate, and we just hand it back and forth to each other. And I do more of the faces and stuff like that and the details, and you kind of do more composition stuff. So it's kind of a 50-50. But I think because we've been working together for about 3 years, we've naturally kind of picked up things of each other, and some things that, you did better, you'll do, and things like that. So we kind of pick on each other's strengths.
Not really much to add in that. I think it's quite good to know your strengths and your weaknesses and not be afraid to not push yourself to do things that you don't feel comfortable doing or don't enjoy. Because I think it's quite nice having someone else, and that's why we also work with a lot of other people. Like, we could try and animate, but I would not enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to do that as well. There's people that are better suited to doing that. So it's knowing that, like, if I I'm trying to like slave away at drawing like a face on this person, I'm like, do you know what? It's much quicker and easier to give it to Liv to do because she's better at it. So it'll be better for Pickle. So I think thinking of it like that and being quite like self-aware in that is really helpful to create like a style that is like so like joined.
Thank you. Any more?
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I've got some. Oh, there's one down here, so we're going to make you run. Well, maybe while you're running around, David. Can I just fire one at you guys so you've got one as well? So my question was going to be, given that you're all different stages of your careers and working the way through this process, if you could do one thing differently in your experience so far, what would that one thing be? And I'm going to start this end with you, Jude, sorry. Put you on the spot.
I think if I could do one thing differently, it would probably be just get started on stuff earlier on. I think when I first got to uni, I sort of felt like there was certain stuff that you had to wait to do. Like you couldn't do certain things in first year because that's not what first years do, and then you couldn't do certain things in second year because that's not what they do. You've got to wait until you get to fourth year and postgrad, and then, until you've got a career, and then you can do the exciting stuff. But actually, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you can just throw yourself into stuff whenever you feel like you're ready to take it on and see what happens. So I think that would be the one thing I'd do differently.
Start sooner, yeah? Good tip.
Yeah, I think mine is actually very similar. I think we're, as dancers, kind of bred to constantly strive for better. And once you've got that ingrained in you, you kind of stop asking more questions for help. You kind of think, oh no, I don't deserve to ask for help in a way. I know that sounds a bit weird. But yeah, I think after hearing, especially the talk beforehand, hearing Andrew sort of saying, just do it, no one's going to do it for you. Yeah, you're the artist.
Brilliant. Bit of bravery in asking for help, okay? What about you, Pickle?
Yeah, I think when creating like portfolios of work and things like that, only show the stuff that you actually want to get like more work of. I think at the start, like we'd like people would come to us and like create a logo or animate this, and we're like we know we're not good at that, but because you're coming and paying for that, we'll do it, and then we'll show that we do it on our website, and then we're like, oh, why do people keep coming and asking us to do logos? We hate logos. We'll just take it off your website. Just don't show what you don't want to get. And then create work in your free time that you do want to do, like kind of like prospective projects that are fake projects, just so you have something to put in your portfolio that you want like to get more work of. So yeah, starting early while you're at uni and things, and like treating the course as like a facilitator to where you want to get to, instead of just being like, I need to tick boxes to get grades. Forget about the grades. Use the course as a facilitator to get where you want to get.
For all those tutors in the room, obviously don't forget about the grades. The grades are
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
However, think about how you can do both at the same time.
Exactly.
I'm just aware there's a question down here.
So this is a question for all of you, really, but because you're all a part of creative or performing industries, we all know that collaboration is a really important part of it. So I was wondering, what industry or media do you think would be the most fun or challenging for your profession to work with?
Probably dance. I feel like merging illustration and dance would be fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't know how we'd do that, but it'd be really cool. I guess you could do projection and dance and...
Projecting onto your costumes.
We're all thinking now.
Ideas are flowing now.
Yeah, this could be a new cross collaboration that we're
There you
starting.
go. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think dance is moving a little bit more into kind of the film kind of industry, and I think that is very, very exciting. And even motion capture, I think, as well. That's kind of an unsung kind of collaboration, I think.
I think for a composer, things that are quite fun to work on are things like working with theatre, because you get to have music in the space, and it's part of a wider performance. But I think also some of the more challenging ones is having music as part of something 3D, like music and sculpture or music and installation. Music that's designed to be in a certain space and be experienced in a certain way along with something physical. That's probably the most challenging. But I think music combined with dance or theatre in a physical performance is probably the most fun.
Thank you. I'm just aware that we are coming to that time of the day where there is a social happening down the road, so I don't want to prevent you from going to that. What I did want to say, though, just to sort of end off today's session, really, is that about a week ago, I had the opportunity to talk with a poet who is now the poet laureate for Birmingham, not the young poet laureate, but the older poet laureate, who used to be a young poet laureate for Birmingham, Jazz Gordosi. And she, at the event we were at, she wrote a really fantastic poem for us based on what was happening during a conference that we were running. And in it, she mentioned that it takes an artist to raise a city. But actually, what is also important to remember is it takes a city to raise an artist, or a creative, or an arts development officer, or a heritage specialist. And so really, before you all go, all those people that held your hands up earlier because you've got jobs in this industry, I wanted you to think back to what was that moment, what was that time in your life where you had opportunities presented to you that you were able to grab hold of, where, as our panel have talked about, you were able to have a go at the variety of things that opened to you because you kept your mind open, where you took those opportunities to try new things, where you took care of yourself, or you took care of your colleagues or your partners or your work colleagues that you're working with, where you were entrepreneurial, where you were opportunist, and where you really thought about the diversity of the output of the skills that you have, where you didn't stick to the one fixed road, because I think that's all the skills that you guys have demonstrated for today, been so vital to your career paths and the way that you've moved forward. Also, what I wanted to say to you, those people that held your hand up, is there are lots of young creatives in this room who didn't hold their hand up. And bearing in mind that statement that Jazz Godozi gave to us about how it takes a city to raise an artist, what would happen if we made that a district to raise an artist? And I wanted you to ask you, as you leave the room, maybe make some contacts with some young creatives in this room or some emergent talent in this room, or even older creatives that are just kind of getting on that journey because they've left their other job somewhere else. And what can you do to be that person that helps them take that step forward? I'm sure all these guys will be happy to talk to you too, so do grab them after the session. Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone.
Right, you've got it. You've made it to the end. You've got your Spark 2023 badge. Well done for sticking in to the bitter end of a very busy day. We've had a really packed programme today with 4 presentations, 4 workshops, 4 demonstrations and 16 stalls outside there, and over 350 delegates passing through the building today. Like you, we're delighted to see old friends and make new connections. So what have we learned? So I think the message coming from this building today is that the district's creative sector is still vibrant, it's still exciting, and it's as still rich as ever. We've got a lot of challenges. A lot of us are facing tricky times, but I think the sheer scope of the talent and the flexibility and the innovation just shown on this stage shows what an amazing future we've got in this district. We've got loads of really exciting things happening in this area over the next few years. That investment that's been long planned is starting to drop. And there's new creative spaces. The architect was talking about the town hall and other spaces are being developed in the area. And there's loads of exciting initiatives and projects going on. I think one of the things that I can share with you, a few weeks ago, we opened our own exhibition at the Royal Pump Rooms at the Leamington Spa Art Gallery Museum. And it's called Silicon Spa, and it's, if you haven't already seen it, it's basically the history of how the gaming industry in Leamington, which you all know is absolutely massive, employs over 2,000 people, how that cluster happened here and why it's happened here, and more importantly, why it's remained here and why it continues to grow. And one of the guys that opened that exhibition and made a speech about it was Phil Warner from Mediatonic, which is a huge games company. And as we were talking to him about making that speech, he was saying, I have to get my solicitors involved here in the States, because, this is everything has to go through the corporate system these days. And we're getting slightly nervous about what he's going to be able to say and how corporate that was actually going to be in that environment. But what came out of Phil's mouth in that speech was an incredibly impassioned, personal reflection on why that sector, why the creative sector is so huge in this area, and particularly in Leamington, and also how proud all of us are to be working in it. And I think it's a good reminder today that we have these buildings and these projects and all this investment happening, but it is the people in this space today that have to make those projects live and that creativity live. It's always about the creatives and their work. We've also learnt that if you get some Indian street food and a few robots outside, everything's good. So we've had conversations throughout the day, and we always pick up things. The way this works is that every Spark we build on what happened last year. And if you've talked to us, we're banking that and we're using that for next time. Some of the things that came out today, we definitely need more opportunities in this area to connect people and their ideas. We all need help with where the funding's coming from, where that development money's coming from, and raising profile and accessing philanthropy. So what's next then? Well, we as a district council who hold this event, we're going to explore how we continue to offer that support. I talked at the beginning a bit about some funding streams that are coming online to help with projects to help deliver things. We've also got our sister event to Spark in the summer. So we do one in February and we do one later on in the year in June, July. The Ignite event, which is more of a celebratory event at the Royal Pump Room, so watch out for that. And Spark 2024 is already in train and already being planned. And as I said again at the beginning, we have significant uplift in funds to make this event grow. So if you've attended today and thought, this didn't quite work for me, or this was really great, give that feedback. When you get that email, please respond to us. Give us an email, Google us on the website, all our contact details are there if you want to meet, talk further about getting involved. This is your event, this is your conference, and without you, it is really nothing. So feedback about what you think you want from those conferences over the next couple of years, and we will take that on board and try and make it happen for you. A few thank yous. Thank you to all of our speakers who've been through today. Thank you to all our chairs who has put an awful lot of work preparing for these sessions today. Thank you to all the demonstrators and especially the Mookies, the food guys in lunchtime who do an amazing job. And thank you to our venue team who work very, very hard. With only one day we had today to get this event up and running yesterday in order to get it ready for you today. And lastly, obviously, most of you who've been involved in the programme of this will know that Jonathan Branson is the lead programmer on this event. It's his baby, his child. He's grown this event over the last 4 years. He's just sat at the back over there lurking because he absolutely hates getting any kind of credit for it, but secretly he loves it. So if you want to drop any feedback back to him directly, please do. We really will appreciate it. It is an awful lot of work to do this, and we plan it throughout the year. And all the conversations we have, all the connections we make, everyone we bump into, we're banking that and keeping it for the next Spark to try and give you the platform to show off what you do. So do come and talk to us. The offer is always open to come and have a chat, okay? There is drinks if you want to carry on until about 6 o'clock. From now until 6 o'clock down in Mill Street, 1 Mill Street. If you don't know where that is, you walk through the park, across the river, across the bridge, and it's the big sandstone building there with 1 Mill Street written large above it. And there's live music from really brilliant musicians from Levi Washington, CJ Wood, to entertain you and have a few drinks and enjoy yourself, and hopefully see you there later. Thank you all very much for coming, and hopefully see you next year.